Washington, D.C., May 30th, 1922. A crowd gathers in front of the finished Lincoln Memorial. Today is Dedication Day. Over 50,000 people have gathered as speakers from across the nation celebrate the memorial's opening. One man stands out from the crowd of VIPs. His beard and mustache are notable features, but it's evident to all who it is. The last son of the slain president, Robert Todd Lincoln. Hello and welcome back to History in Focus, your one-stop shop for the stuff they didn't teach you in school. This week we'll be taking a look at the life and times of Robert Todd Lincoln and the moments of history he witnessed in his life. Just remember to give Freedom a ring and hit that subscribe button. A quick aside, I know that my roadmap stated that this was supposed to be a one-episode piece, but I believe that this is better served as a multi-part video series, so we will be adjusting the roadmap release to account for this. Robert Todd Lincoln was born in Springfield, Illinois on August 1st, 1843. While close to both of his parents, it's clear that he was closest to his mother, Mary Todd Lincoln, largely due to his father's constant travels as a circuit court lawyer and then later a politician. This close relationship between mother and son was only strengthened when Robert's younger brother Eddie died in 1850. Robert was often described as being very sociable, like his father and mother. As a teenager, he was part of the Springfield Cadets, a sort of youth club where kids would dress in military uniform and march in parades and such. It was in this role that Robert witnessed the final debate between Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln in 1858. After deciding that he wanted to attend Harvard College, Robert left Springfield in 1859 to take the entrance examinations. He failed though. Undeterred, Robert enrolled in the Phillips Exeter Academy to prep for the entrance exams the next year. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was invited to speak at Henry Ward Beecher's church. Missing his son, Lincoln accepted the offer to speak in New York and then visit Robert. It was in New York that Lincoln made his famous speech at Cooper Union Institute, where he famously said, "Let us have faith, that right makes might, and in that faith, let us, to the end dare do our duty as we understand it." It was this speech that helped to bring Lincoln back to the attention of the Republican Party bosses, and help him get the nomination for president later. Robert would graduate from Exeter and was admitted to Harvard in 1860, not too far after his father won the nomination for president. While the press was focused primarily on Abraham Lincoln, Robert was not immune to the press's attention, being dubbed the Prince of Rails, while his father was the Rail Splitter. Robert would travel back to Springfield just after his father won the election of 1860, and then accompanied his father on his famous trip to the inauguration, though he was not informed of Abraham Lincoln's decision to split from the main group and travel separately to avoid a possible assassination attempt en route to the Capitol. Robert returned to Harvard to continue his studies, and despite the Civil War breaking out, did not enlist right away. This is partially due to the belief amongst Harvard students that they were better served as officers rather than privates. While we don't know if this was Robert's line of thinking as well, his desires to enlist were also blocked by his parents. Mary Todd Lincoln's mental struggles are well known. During the war, she was vehemently against Robert enlisting, believing that were he to do so, he would be killed, telling her husband, "We have lost one son, and his loss is as much as I can bear," without being called upon to make another sacrifice. But publicly, she stated that an educated man can serve his country better than an ignoramus. President Lincoln would forbid Robert to join due to the fears his wife had of losing her oldest son. But that is not to say that Abraham Lincoln didn't have his own concerns, mainly that his political opponents would use his son as a way to embarrass him or interfere with his duties. But there was also criticism for not having his son enlist, as well as being called a hypocrite as other people's sons went off to war and died. Robert would cite his father's reasoning as the biggest obstacle to enlistment rather than his mother's. Regardless, Robert would continue his education at Harvard, traveling down to Washington, D.C. when on breaks to visit his family. Despite being the son of a president and no doubt receiving attention from both the press and the public at large, Robert was admired for his modesty and humbleness, and while social activities often did get him into trouble, it was never any more so than any other young man at Harvard. However, it did hurt his grades, especially during his junior year. It seems though that this more carefree attitude changed, especially after the winter of 1862. In 1862, Lincoln's two youngest sons, Willie and Tad, became ill with typhoid fever. Robert was present during his brother's illness and was helping his parents during their large reception on February 5th, helping to greet guests while his parents checked on their children. Willie would die on February 20th, 1862. The remainder of his junior and senior years were filled with studying at Harvard, traveling to the capital every break he got. In either 1863 or 64, while at the train station in New Jersey, Robert was pushed off the station platform as the sitting train began to move. He very likely would have been crushed by the train had he not been pulled up by a good Samaritan. That Samaritan happened to be Edwin Booth, the famous stage actor and older brother of John Wilkes Booth. Robert would be present during some of the most seminal moments of the Civil War, watching and confiding in his father as the war waged in the fields of Virginia and Tennessee. Robert was present in July of 1863 as the Army of the Potomac chased the Army of Northern Virginia out of Gettysburg. Robert wrote in his diary that he went to his father's office. He was in much distress, his head leaning upon his arms on the desk in front of him, and when he raised his head, there were evidences of tears upon his face. In 1865, Robert had a conversation with his father about the Hampton Roads Conference, which was an attempt to forge a peace treaty between the rebellious states and the Union, and then go enforce the Monroe Doctrine by declaring war against France and Mexico to remove Emperor Maximilian. Needless to say, that didn't work, and the conference ended with nothing coming from it, and the war dragged on. Robert graduated from Harvard in 1864 and decided to follow his father's footsteps into law. His father quipped, "You should learn more than I ever did, but you will never have so good a time." By the winter of 65, Robert went back to Washington to press upon my father my wish to see some military service before the close of the war. The president finally did relent, but not without the condition that Robert would join the staff of General Grant as an aide, offering to pay the salary out of his own pocket and with a nominal rank, as Abraham Lincoln put it. Grant accepted Lincoln's offer, and Robert finally joined the Army with the rank of captain as an adjutant to Grant's staff. By all accounts, Captain Lincoln performed well and took time to witness his father's second inaugural address before returning to the front lines. In April of 1865, Robert would be present for two of the most significant moments in American history. First, on April 9, 1865, Captain Lincoln was present as the well-dressed General Robert Lee walked up to the steps of the McLean House to surrender to General U.S. Grant. Lincoln and the rest of the junior officers sat on the porch waiting until the two men stepped back out. He would be introduced to Lee before he left. On April 14th, Grant and his staff returned to Washington, D.C. Captain, soon to just be Robert Lincoln, returned to the White House and had breakfast with his family that morning. It is unknown how Robert spent his day. We do know that Robert was asked by his father to join him and Mary at Ford's Theater after the Grants declined the invitation. Tired from his journey, Robert also declined. About 10:30, I heard the clatter of horses coming up to the drive to the White House. I thought someone was coming to get a reprieve for some poor soldier who was going to get shot the next morning, and they would be disappointed because the president was not there. Someone, and we don't know for certain who, came to the White House in a rush to alert Robert that his father had been shot. Regardless, Robert rushed to the Peterson house where his father was and was informed by the Lincoln doctor that there was no hope of recovery. Robert would spend the rest of the night comforting his mother and watching his father go to the ages. This would come to pass on April 15, 1865. Robert Lincoln was now the head of the Lincoln family, and at the age of 21 and 4 months, was now the keeper of the Lincoln legacy. His future was wide open and treacherous. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for future content. Let us know what you thought down in the comments below and what you would like us to cover next.